Welcome to the First Unitarian Universalist congregation of Terre, Haute. This congregation welcomes all people, regardless of their age, religion, race, nationality, ability, sexual orientation, gender identity or expression, or anything else that has been used to divide people. We are a group of people with our own opinions, our own ideas, our own dreams, but we share ideals. We share a common belief in a liberal religion. In our discussions, we may disagree with each other, but we must always remember that what unites us is stronger than what separates us. We must always end the service aware of the love that we have for each other.
Reverence and respect for human nature is the core of Unitarian Universalist faith. We believe that all the dimensions of our being carry the potential to be good. We celebrate the gifts of being human, our intelligence and capacity for observation and reason, our senses and ability to appreciate beauty, our creativity, our feelings and emotions. We cherish our bodies as well as our souls. We can use our gifts to offer love, to work for justice, to heal injury, to create pleasure for ourselves and others. Just to be is a blessing. Just to live is holy, the great 20th century Rabbi Abraham Heschel wrote. Unitarian Universalists affirm the inherent worth and dignity of each person as a given of faith, an unshakable conviction calling us to self-respect and respect for others. Reverend Dr. Rebecca Ann Parker, minister and theologian. Our opening words are number 536 in the back of your hymnal by Mary Oliver. I want to thank Bill for choosing that. She's one of my favorite poets. Morning poem. Every morning the world is created.
Under the orange sticks of the sun, the heaped ashes of the night turn into leaves again,
and fasten themselves to the high branches, and the ponds appear like black cloth on which are painted islands of summer lilies.
If it is your nature to be happy, you will swim away along the soft trails for hours, your imagination alighting everywhere.
And if your spirit carries within it the thorn that is heavier than lead, if it's all you can do to keep on trudging,
there is still somewhere deep within you a beast shouting that the earth is exactly what it wanted.
Every pond with its blazing lilies is a prayer heard and answered lavishly every morning.
Whether or not you have ever dared to be happy, whether or not you have ever dared to pray. Mary Oliver.
The opening hymn is number 21. Our transitional words are number 490. You do not have to be good.
You do not have to walk on your knees for 100 miles through the desert, repenting.
You only have to let the soft animal of your body love what it loves.
Tell me about despair, yours, and I will tell you about mine.
Meanwhile, the world goes on.
Meanwhile, the sun and the clear pebbles of the rain are moving across the landscapes, over the prairies and the deep trees, the mountains and the rivers.
Meanwhile, the wild geese, high in the clean blue air, are heading home again.
Whoever you are, no matter how lonely, the world offers itself to your imagination, calls to you like the wild geese, harsh and exciting, over and over announcing your place in the family of things. Mary Oliver.
And now I would like to invite Reverend Bill Breeden to come up here. Most of you do know who he is, his background, but if you don't, he is a retired UU minister from the UU congregation in Bloomington.
I won't be staying very long after the service because I have to go to Federal Death Row to see my friend Chad Folks. I'll be over there for about 3 hours this afternoon. I'm going to drop Glenda off at a park where she can write, spend time there while I'm in prison. I can't say it's the happiest place to be, but it is my honor to be Chad's friend and Chad's minister, as I have been for 14 years probably, something like that, 12, 13. I forget. I decided to do a little with poetry today. Poetry, like science fiction, is prophetic and is really what you find in it. And I begin with this little thing that I sat with last night. Ellipsis. Somewhere, at every moment, a poet at a desk or under a tree, on a bus or in a taxi beside the sea or beneath an ocean of stars or anywhere and everywhere at all finds logos. And once again winds the stem of life, moving the cosmos forward one word at a time. Poetry is nothing more or less than life defined as one finds it. The biblical writer states, in the beginning was the word, logos. Such a statement begs the question of whether life is possible without word, whether vocalized or signed. If the poet did not wind the stem, would time stand still? Would the flower blossom without the poet's description? This morning I would like to share with you some words of poets and make a few comments along the way. I've written poems throughout the years, but always seem to store them away to be found by someone after I'm gone, I guess, because I can never seem to find them when I want to. Maybe that is for the best. My daughter remembers a few of my ridiculous poems I shared with her as a child, and every time she quotes one of them, I curse her exacting memory. My hope this morning is to give you a taste of poetry that I find meaningful, in hopes that each of you will find time to explore the depths of meaning in the poetic form. Yesterday, I discovered a poem which became a hit for the Beatles, written by Paul McCartney. I had heard the song before, but I'd never really understood what it meant or what the inspiration brought it on. That poem was Blackbird by Paul McCartney. Blackbird singing in the dead of night, take these broken wings and learn to fly. All your life you were only waiting for this moment to arise. Blackbird singing in the dead of night, take these sunken eyes and learn to see. All your life you were only waiting for this moment to be free. Blackbird fly into the dark black night. Blackbird fly into the dark, dark night. As familiar as I was with that song, I didn't know until just a couple of days ago when I read a piece about Paul McCartney explaining the thing. And first, you should know that in England, women and girls were called birds. So it's talking to a woman. Paul McCartney was visiting America, and he was sitting resting one day when he heard a woman screaming. And he didn't know what it was at. He was trying to see what was happening. Found a black woman being surrounded by police. She was handcuffed and she was being beaten. He thought the woman had committed a terrible crime, and only to learn that she had been sitting in a place reserved for whites. Paul was shocked. There was no segregation in England, but here in America, the land of the free, this is how blacks were being treated. And then he also remembered watching television following the news in America, the race riots and what was happening after Little Rock, Arkansas, when the picture of 15-year-old Elizabeth Eckford attempted to attend classes at Little Rock Central High. I won't read the words that were shouted at that time, they're a little bit too bad. But McCartney couldn't believe this was happening in America. Later at a concert, he would meet two of the women who inspired him to write this poem. Thelma Mothershed Ware and Elizabeth Eckford, members of the Little Rock Nine. And McCartney would tell the audience he was inspired by the courage of these women. Way back in the 60s, there was a lot of trouble going on, especially in Little Rock. We would notice this news back in England, so it's a really important place for us because to me, this is where civil rights started. We would see what was going on and sympathize with the people going through those troubles. And it made me want to write that song. If ever I got back to the people going through those trouble, it made me want to help them a bit. And this is a song. Now, one of my favorite poets I've lived with for 52 years. And so I've asked her to share a poem of hers with us this morning.
I really appreciate Bill asking me to read poetry this morning. He has been such a support with my writing, whether it's poetry or stories or songs. And I feel really blessed in my relationship that I've had with Bill for so many years. So this is a poem I wrote a couple of weeks ago. Familiar Rhythms and Wonderings. Morning to morning, midnight to midnight, I dwell in this Garden of Eden, smack dab in the middle of paradise and just a stone's throw from the tree of knowledge. Seasons come, stay a good long while, then move on, making way for the next and the next. How can I be anything but grateful, content, joy-filled at any particular moment of the day, given this lush woodland I inhabit? Trees surround our three-room cabin. Every room has at least 2 windows. Every window has a view. Summer melts into autumn. Dogwood berries glisten. Noonday sun shimmers on snakeroot blossoms, white and delicate, like hundreds of bridal bouquets along the lane at edge of woods beside the county road. September trees shake out autumnal wardrobe, and I wonder, do birds hear tired green dripping from leaves as October yellows ease in? Do they notice tinges of orange and red glinting here and there and sing a different tune? Do they repair winter nests as nights get cooler, toss out brittle eggshells and broken twigs? Or perhaps make plans to fly to warmer clime as 1,000 shades of brown transfigure wildflowers and grasses growing thick on the dam, cattails and willows at water's edge. I wonder at the mystery of it all as the wind-rippled lake softens the sun and evening twilight sets in. The tree of knowledge looms large, and I make a to-do list as long as its foreboding shadow. There's work to be done, projects to be completed, friends and strangers to show up for, wrongs to right and rights to fight for, an earth to save and songs to sing, to heal my own soul, if not a hurting world. The truth is, my heart breaks a little every day from some sadness or madness, and even from the aching beauty of autumn's touch. The rhythm is familiar. The breaking heart, the glad heart. The breaking heart, the glad heart. A throbbing of life's realities that keep me tuned into paradox, yin and yang, dark and light, the inescapable wholeness of being. And beneath every ragged and magnificent scrap of it, the footfalls of life carry me gently, and I come, as Wendell Berry says, into the peace of wild things. The garden, the world, the human heart keep turning with the seasons. Passions burn and songs are born, morning to morning, midnight to midnight.
It's a poem by Jacqueline Allen Trumbull. How do others sin against you? By cursing me, telling lies about me, or striking me. What must you do to those who thus sin against you? Answer, I must forgive them. See, I learned my catechism well. Learned to offer my cloak and coat, my cheek again and again as the skin was splayed from my body. I can quote Martin Luther King Jr. with ease. Praise the Americana of his martyrdom, the sweet, unselfish beauty of that bullet's velocity. Shall I sing, we shall overcome while I swing? I have wanted so long to believe in justice, to think of each blow as recompense for my wickedness. How can I continue? How can I continue? How can I continue to take and eat this image of myself, choke on the eloquence of my dissent, speak love fluently to someone with his knee on my neck, his bullet in my child? And a poet by Yusuf Kamanyaka. It's called The African Burial Ground. They came as Congo, Guinea, and Angola feet turned to rhythms of a thumb piano. They came to work fields of barley and flax, livestock, stone and slab, brick and mortar, to make wooden barrels, some going from slave to servant and half freeman. They built tongue and groove, wedged into their place in New Amsterdam. Decades of seasons changed the city from Dutch to York, and dream-footed hard work rattled their bones. They danced Ashanti, they lived and died. Shrouded in cloth and cedar and pine coffins, Trinity Church owned them in 6.5 acres of sloping soil. Before speculators arrived, grass and weeds overtook what was most easily forgotten, and tannery shops drained there. Did descendants and newcomers shoulder rock and heave loose gravel into the landfill before building crews came with guitars and harmonicas chasing away ghosts at lunchtime? Soon, footsteps of lower Manhattan strutted overhead, back and forth, between old denials and new arrivals, going from major to minor pieties, always on the go, the click of heels, the tap of a drum, awaking the dead. Speaking of the African Burial Ground in Lower Manhattan. By Christopher Soto. All the dead boys look like me. Last time I saw myself die is when police killed Jesse Hernandez, a 17-year-old brown queer who was sleeping in their car. Yesterday I saw myself die again. 50 times I died in Orlando. This was at the time of the Pulse shooting. I remember reading Dr. Jose Esteban Munoz before he passed. I was studying at NYU where he was teaching, where he wrote shit that made me feel like a queer brown survival was possible. He didn't survive, and now on the dance floor, in the restroom, on the news, in my chest, there are another 50 bodies that look like mine and are dead. And I've been marching for black lives and talking about police brutality against Native communities too for years now, but this morning I feel it. I really feel it again. How can we imagine ourselves, we being black, Native today, brown people, how can we imagine ourselves when all the dead boys look like us? Once I asked my nephew if he wanted to go to college, what career he would like, as if the whole world was his for the choosing. Once he answered me without fearing, tombstones or cages or the hands from a father. The hands of my lover yesterday praised my whole body, made angels from my lips, Ave Maria, full of grace. He propped me up like the roof of a cathedral in NYC before we opened the news and read about the people who think 2 brown queers can't build cathedrals, only cemeteries, Each time we kiss, a funeral plot opens. In the bedroom, I accept his kiss. I lose my reflection. I'm tired of writing this poem, but I want to say one last word about yesterday. My father called. I heard him cry for only the second time in my life. He sounded like he loved me. It's something I'm rarely able to hear and hope, if anything, his sound is what my body remembers first. Christopher Soto. All the dead boys look like me. This is a poem by Javier Zamora, an immigrant, a refugee. It's for Chino. In the middle of that desert that didn't look like sand and sand only, in the middle of those acacias, whiptails, and coyotes, someone yelled La Migra, and everyone ran. La Migra is immigration. In that dried creek where 40 of us slept, we turned to each other and you flew from my side in the dirt. Black-throated sparrows and dawn hitting the tops of mesquites beautifully against the herd of legs. You sprinted back toward me. I jumped on your shoulders and we ran from the white trucks. It was then the gun ready to press its index. I said, freeze, Chino, para por favor. Stop, please. So I wouldn't touch their legs that kicked you. You pushed me under your chest, and I never thanked you, beautiful Chino. The only name I know to call you by. Farewell, you tattered chest, the M, the S, the 13, tattooed chest. The phone number you gave me when you went east to Virginia and I went west to San Francisco. You called twice a month. Then your cousin said the gang you ran from in El Salvador found you in Alexandria. Farewell, your brown arms that shielded me then, that shield me now from La Migra. Glenda and I made a trip, as you know, to the border last year, year before? Year before. The years go by so weirdly now in this pandemic. I think, it's one day seems a month, and then a week seems, or a year seems a week. And we met, and I went back a second time and spent time working with refugees from El Salvador and Guatemala and helping them fill out the massive amount of paperwork they have to fill out just to get considered, and they have to fill it out in English. And I had an interpreter sitting beside me working with another person. Luckily, most of the things on the forms were things like addresses and things like that that I could translate pretty easily. But I got to sit with those people and understand that you do not walk hundreds of miles with your children. You do not jump in the water where sharks are unless you cannot live on the land. Unless it's more dangerous to stay, you don't jump in the water. Unless it's more dangerous to stay, you don't cross deserts. You don't risk gangs or the coyotes and the people who take advantage of them. The poets remind us of the world in which we live, which is really a stark opposite to what Glenda and I live every day. What most of us do. We're very fortunate, and we need to understand how fortunate we are. And it's not through any grace of our own. I never have said, and I refuse to say for many years, can't say I never said it, but I refuse to say for many years, I'm proud to be an American. I didn't do anything to be an American. I just got born here. I mean, if I'd crossed the desert for 5 or 6 weeks with a child on my back, got through immigration, went through the citizenship process, and then an American, I might have something to be very proud of. Actually, I'm thankful to be an American. I don't have any right to be proud. It just happened to me. And I think sometimes we need to sit down and say, how did we get here? Why are we here? Why are we so blessed? We need to learn to share our blessings with others, and thankfully, most of you do. This is a poem called Occupation by Bonnie Michelle Pratt. Women who wait in dentist offices while much-loved, freckle-faced children go sullenly in to be checked and x-rayed and lectured and given rubber toys and a new toothbrush to take home. Women who wait in parked cars beside dance schools and for emotional teenage daughters with acne and scuffed pink ballet shoes and tights with runs and leotards that are already a size too small. Women who wait in courtrooms with hostile lawyers and bored judges trying to get more money to pay for babysitters so they can go to work and get more money to pay attorney's fees. Women who wait in nursing homes to die of uselessness in ivory rooms with sterile walls and yellow curtains, widowed by men who couldn't cry and couldn't touch and died of heart attacks. That last verse grips me because so much of the male persona in America is built up around toughness. So much of the male persona is unwillingness. Big boys don't cry, and little boys better not. That's what we grew up with. And so many times we carry it all the way through our lives, afraid to cry, afraid to touch, and die of heart attacks. I invite you to be more of a man than that. Denise Levertov, Goodbye to Tolerance. Genial poets, pink-faced, earnest wits, you have given the world some choice morsels, goblets of language presented as one presents T-bone steak and cherries jubilee. Goodbye. Goodbye. I don't care if I never taste your fine food again, neutral fellows, seers of every side. Tolerance, what crimes are committed in your name? And you, good women, bakers of nicest bread, blood donors, your crumbs choke me. I would not want a drop of your blood in me. It is pumped by weak hearts, perfect pulses that never falter, and irresponsible to nightmare reality. It is my brothers, my sisters, whose blood spurts out and stops forever because you choose to believe it is not your business. Goodbye. Goodbye. Your poems shut their little mouths. Your loaves grow moldy. A gulf has split the ground between us, and you won't wave. You're looking another way. We shan't meet again unless you leap it, leaving behind you the cherished worms of your dispassion, your pallid ironies, your jovial, murderous, wry-humored, balanced judgment. Leap over unbalanced? Then how our frantic tears would flow and mingle for joy. Tolerance. Of course, we preach tolerance a lot. We have a lot of tolerance in what we believe. But there's a difference in tolerance of belief and tolerance of prejudice and tolerance of hate. And we can write poems about how nice everything is and go on, but that's not the job of poetry. Some poetry is good for that and needs to be written, but it needs to be combined with lives committed to justice and the unwillingness to be tolerant with injustice. Tomorrow is Indigenous Peoples Day. By the way, it's also National Coming Out Day, which is one of the reasons I picked some of the poems I did as well. Crowfoot was born in 1821 at the Blackfoot Crossing on the Bow River, now a province in Alberta, Canada. He quickly rose as the orator for the Blackfoot Confederacy, and in September 1877, on behalf of his nation, he unwillingly but trustfully ceded 50,000 square miles of its prairie land to the Canadian government, a treaty which led to the rapid disappearance of the buffalo and the near starvation of the Blackfeet. In April of 1890, in his dying hours, these were the last words of his life. What is life? It is the flash of a firefly in the night. It is the breath of a buffalo in the wintertime. It is the little shadow which runs across the grass and loses itself in the sunset. And then a woman, native shaman, named Uvanuk, an Eskimo woman celebrating the joy being moved by nature. To the Indian, writes Natalie in the Indian's book, song is the breath of the spirit that consecrates the act of life. The great sea has sent me adrift. It moves me as a weed in a great river. Earth and the great weather move me, have carried me away, and moved my inward parts with joy. That's from the book Touch the Earth by McLuhan. And a friend that I had the opportunity to spend a few hours with a couple of years ago named Wendell Berry. I'm sure most of you know who he is, farmer, poet and author down in Kentucky, lives on the Ohio River. He's getting old, and I hope to get down there to see him one of these days, but who knows. This is called Enemies. If you are not to become a monster, you must care what they think. If you care what they think, how will you not hate them, and so become a monster of the opposite kind? From where then is love to come? Love for your enemy. That is the way of liberty. From forgiveness. Forgiven they go free. It comes from forgiveness. Forgiven they go free of you and you of them. They are to you as sunlight on a green branch. You must not think of them again except as monsters like yourself, pitiable because unforgiving. This is, I think one of the most important things we learn in life, we can learn, is that forgiveness is not for the forgiven. Forgiveness is for the forgiver. I don't know how many, working with people on death row and many people in prison over the years, and working with victims of criminals over the years, I have found many who have discovered the way to be free. There's a group called Murder Victims' Families for Reconciliation, who some of them have endured the greatest, most heinous crimes you can imagine to their families, to their children, and yet has found the grace to forgive. And in doing so, it set them free. It set them free. Forgiveness is where you find freedom. Because until you forgive, you're carrying that person on your body, on your mind, and in your heart. And so long as you carry that, you are not free. I had a woman in our church in Bloomington, where I was a minister for 14 years. Every once in a while, she'd come in my office. She was close to 80 years old. And she would sit down and she'd say, "It happened again." And I said, "What's that?" I knew what it was because she'd come in several times. I knew when she said it happened again, I knew what I was going to hear. It happened again. So-and-so came in the door and walked up and smiled at me. And I can never forget what she did. I can never forget what she did. We went through this again and again for years as I was her minister. And I finally told her, I said, you remind me of a ship, a sailboat, and you've forgotten to pull your anchor. And the wind is blowing through your sails, but you can't get anywhere because you got this damn anchor stuck down in the mud. And I said, we've gone through this many times. It isn't hurting her. She comes in happy and so forth. Gracious, she's forgotten all about it, for crying out loud. She's free. But it's got you tied. Your boat is stuck in the mud, and the wind goes by, and your sails can't help you. And all you have to do is take a little axe and chop the rope, and your boat's going to sail. And she was never able to do that. To the day she died, when I visited her just before she died, she still stuck to that anchor. And it's one of the saddest deaths I've ever been around. I've been around a lot of deaths. But hers was one of the saddest because she could never let go of something that had happened 15 years ago. And it reminded me again and again that forgiveness, the person who offended her, I'm not even sure she knew she had offended her, but even if she did, she wasn't bound by it. She wasn't bound by it. But The offended person was, because she could not learn the power of forgiveness to set you free. And forgiveness does not mean we tolerate everything. It does not mean we do not speak up for ourselves speak up for others, but it means we do not allow it to tie our hearts and our minds to something that happened that we cannot change by hating the other person. For love for your enemy, that is the way of liberty. Where's it come from? From forgiveness. Forgiven, they go free of you, and you of them. They are to you as sunlight on a green branch. You must not think of them again except as monsters like yourself, pitiable, because unforgiving. As long as we're unforgiving, we're really in the same boat with that person who's offended us. We can't get out of that boat because we're stuck to that event. I invite you to explore poetry. It's we have a shelf in our small cabin of books and poems, and it's hard for me to pick out just the favorite ones anytime, because once I sit down with a book, I have to read forever. I just can't quit sometimes. And I appreciate the poets in our lives. As you know, Mary Oliver's kind of the poet laureate of UUism. And she was at the General Assembly, I think the year I got preliminary fellowship, I saw her there. But she spoke at General Assembly many times. Look to the poets, because poets, like prophets, give us an idea of who we can be by giving us a picture of who we are. Blessed be. Our closing hymn, number 209, Come Ye Longing, Thirsty Souls. Closing words again are from Mary Oliver. To live in this world, you must be able to do three things: to love what is mortal, to hold it against your bones. Your own life depends on it. And when the time comes to let it go, to let it go. Our congregational blessing.
May the blessings of love rest upon you. May peace abide with you. May God's presence illuminate your heart now and forevermore.
Go in peace. Know that you are loved and that your life is sacred.